What is up, YouTube, and welcome back to another live stream on high altitude investing. Today is the 7th of February 2026, and we're going to be covering chart patterns that you guys need to know for the up and coming bull market, and basically how to trade these, how to spot them, how to be more profitable using these chart patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and share the link for the stream today here in Discord and on X as well. So yeah, it's going to be a good live stream today. A lot of stuff about chart patterns, the important chart patterns that you guys need to know, kind of how to trade them, how to use them. A little bit of a different live stream. I know normally I'm just talking about what I think the markets are going to do, but today I figured, you know what, it's time to do a live stream about chart patterns and how they apply to these markets, how to make the most money using chart patterns, the most common patterns that we see in crypto, and basically just do a live stream about that. So that's what today's stream is all about. We will do obviously some analysis along the way on Bitcoin and other coins as well to study some of these chart patterns and to tell you guys what I think the market's going to do, kind of apply in real time what you're going to learn in today's live stream. Professor K, what is up? Thank you for tuning in. Good to see you here live. Solek says, yo, brother, greetings from Arctic Circle. Holy cow. Cool. Hi, Dallin, bro, from India. Check PHA. All right, we'll do some analysis on altcoins and stuff today as well. The main purpose of today's stream is to run over chart patterns that you guys need to know to make the most money in this market. Greetings from Spain. Cool. That's awesome, man. Dallin of Jesus, my bro. What's up, Caesar Rodriguez? Good to see you, man. Rico Hawk, good day, Dallin. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys taking some time to tune in. So let's pull up the list of chart patterns. The main focus of today's stream, we will cover requests. I will cover Bitcoin, what I think the market's going to do, but I've been talking a lot about that lately. So the main purpose of today's live stream is to learn about patterns and the ones that you guys need to be looking out for, kind of how to apply them, how to basically just be a profitable crypto trader using the right patterns in this market. So let's start off with some basic patterns first, like the bullish flag pattern. You guys have probably heard about this pattern before. You've probably seen it before. This is definitely one of the trading patterns that you guys need to know in this up and coming bull market for crypto. One of the applications that I used for this pattern back in 2024 was this bull flag on Bitcoin. So let's zoom out a little bit here to the 4-day time frame, and we'll just take a look at this bull flag on Bitcoin. So this is what a bull flag looks like. You're already in an established uptrend. You're already trending up in the market, and then you start to crash, you start to pull back inside of a channel, a downward pointing channel, then you have a bullish break of the resistance line, and that leads to a big increase in value. So for example, here is Bitcoin zoomed out here in 2024, and we have this bullish flag pattern right here, which was one of the things that cued me in to Bitcoin breaking out towards 126,000 per coin. So let's go ahead and use the line tool instead of the dotted line. There we go. So we've got a perfect example of a bull flag here, right? We're already in an established uptrend right here, already going up, increasing in value, and then we start to drop inside of a downward pointing channel, and then we break bullish out of that channel, and you can see a big increase in value. A lot of you guys probably know some of these basic chart patterns, but I've also got a lot of new viewers, a lot of people that haven't followed my channel, a lot of new subscribers. So this is something I wanted to cover to help you guys have a better understanding of how to apply these patterns so you guys can be successful traders in this market. Because honestly, there's a lot of opportunity in this market, in the big picture, for the upside, to be making a lot of money. And have a correct understanding of these patterns is going to make a big difference in your trading and your investing. So it's kind of a big deal. What happened with Velo? I will cover the requests that you guys have today as well. You know what? We'll just start covering requests, and we'll use the requests to have a better understanding of these chart patterns in the market. So let's remove all these drawing tools. So let's start off with PHA here, if we can find it. PHA, Fallon Network, I'm assuming is what you wanted. Yep, Fallon Network. Cool. So let's pull a Fallon Network versus the dollar here. See if we can find one with a little bit more data than this one has. PHA. Maybe Kraken. No, it looks like Binance pretty much has the most data out of anything. Excuse me. So let's go back to Binance over here. Okay. So this is a perfect example of a triangle pattern here. Let's go over to our list of chart patterns down here. Where is it? There we go. And let's pull up our triangle pattern here. Here's a bearish triangle pattern. Let's pull this thing up. Go over to Trading View again. Man, my bar isn't loading. On the bottom, my Windows bar. That's weird. So here is a bearish pennant, okay? So a bearish pennant is basically just a triangle. You can see this is what happened with PHA. We have this triangle here, and we broke bearish out of that triangle, right? So that was a downward continuation pattern here for PHA. But we also see bullish divergence here. You can see a higher low in price. Excuse me. Let me grab some water. My throat's kind of... So this is a bearish triangle, basically, here with PHA. But the thing is we have bullish divergence forming here as well. So we have a lower low in price, but now we have a higher low on the MACD. So that's classic bullish divergence here with PHA. We should see a bullish reversal very soon up off of these lows. This is a pretty typical type of capitulation, right? You think the true bottom is in, and then one more big crash happens, and the previous bottom was a false bottom, and it ends up being the bottom of the cycle, right? So if we pull up Ethereum, just classic example of this. Let's go over to Ethereum, take it off the logarithmic scale, and zoom into this point on Ethereum. So, right, you think the true bottom is in right here. Then one more capitulation happens, one more drop below that support level. Everybody thinks it's dead. That was really just a big liquidity grab for the big whales to pick it up at dirt cheap prices, to really shake out everybody's stop loss, to scare people out of the market. It ends up being the bottom of the bear market, right? And that's exactly what we see here with PHA. So this is a pretty important pattern to be aware of as well, because a market cycle has a tendency to look like this, okay? You'll get a big pump in the market. You'll get a bull trap like this, And sometimes this coin, right, this got added back here in July of 2021. So we don't have like a full cycle here like we do with Ethereum, but you can basically just start tracing the cycle from wherever you have the data, right? This would basically be like looking, like pretend that we only had Ethereum starting right here, you know. We only had this much data. We didn't have this big pump on Ethereum. When you're studying these cycles, if you don't have a full complete cycle, it's super easy to get over that. All you have to do is just basically start tracing from where you're at in the cycle. Say, you know, get as close of an estimation as you can is where you would be at in the cycle if you had a full chart with all of the data, you know. And that's exactly what we see here with PHA. We have this pattern right here is basically like this bull trap right here on Ethereum. But this is a pretty typical thing for markets to have a big pump, big pullback like this. In this case of PHA, we don't have the pump really. It just doesn't have the data. But then the market will go like this and create the anger phase. And then you'll have one more low, which is the depression phase of the cycle. I stayed up late last night, you guys, so I'm sorry if I'm a little bit slower than I normally am. Also, if you guys want in-depth analysis about crypto, I covered everything yesterday and on a full night of sleep, so that's a little bit better. But yeah, so we have this big correction in the market, right? Big pullback, bounce up like here, crash, pretty classic cycle. And this is the same thing that happened on the NASDAQ, right? So let's pull up the NASDAQ here. I was questioning, I was like, should I do a live stream today? I was kind of up late last night doing music stuff with my friends, and I didn't know if I was going to have the energy in me, but we've got this, all right? So this is what happened to the NASDAQ as well, right? You have a big pump in the market. Classic market cycle, right? This ends up being a false bottom right here. Then you go for the true bottom right here. Now, the thing that you have to understand about this is this can take different shapes and sizes, all right? So if we pull up the market cycle chart over here on the, just over here on the left again, like this. Let's just remove these drawing tools actually and draw another one. It can look like this, okay? You can have a big pump in the market like this, a big pullback, bull trap coming down, and then it can look more like this, okay? So you can see how that's more like what we see here with PHA, whereas the NASDAQ over here is a little bit more sharp of a decline here. Whereas this one kind of accumulated in the anger phase, and then it dropped down into the depression phase of the cycle. So that's the best possible place to be buying. But you got to understand this pattern of a market cycle can take all different types of shapes and sizes. This is the nature of these markets, to have different fractals, essentially, to have a different patterns that occur in the market, but it's the same type of essential pattern, but you're going to have different variations of that pattern. And there's a lot of them, but essentially it's still the same fundamental pattern appearing with different variations and different versions of it, basically, right? Let's go read some of these some of these chat box messages here. Can you look at Doge on the 15-minute time frame? What chart patterns do you see? Sure. Let's pull up Doge here. Thank you guys for bearing with me today. Like I was seriously up so late last night. I really shouldn't have been, but whatever. So let's drop down to the 15-minute time frame here and see what kind of patterns we see on Dogecoin. Yeah, so this is a bullish flag pattern here with Dogecoin and also an inverse head shoulders. So let's pull up my, I don't know why my window is, oh, there it is. Cool. Let's pull up my patterns here. By the way, this is free. You can get this in the Discord. Go to the Discord and then click on Knowledge and Links. And here in Knowledge and Links, you will see top trading patterns, and that's a Google link right there, and you can download all of these trading patterns for free. But a couple patterns that I'm seeing here on Dogecoin in the 15-minute time frame. The first one, let's pull up this inverse head and shoulders pattern, and let's drop it right here. And you can see that we have an inverse head and shoulder. So here's our head, our left shoulder, and our right shoulder right here. So that's a perfect inverse head and shoulders pattern here on Dogecoin. But we also see a bull flag as well. So if I can get my window to pop up, there we go. So we also have this bull flag pattern as well. So let's delete the inverse head and shoulders and paste the bull flag onto the chart here. So here's the bull flag pattern for Dogecoin. Here's our flag right here. Already in this uptrend from this low up. And then we break bullish out of that flag. What's really good to see here is this big spike in volume. That's a super bullish signal here for Dogecoin to see that. To see at the point of breakout, we're breaking bullish out of this bull flag. Like right here at that point of breakout. That confirms that the bull flag is playing out when you break above the upper line right here, this line right here. When you break above that level, that confirms the pattern, but it especially confirms the pattern on high volume. So to see a big spike in volume while the price is breaking bullish, that's bullish for multiple reasons. One of those reasons being the fact that increasing price and volume is bullish. So the fact that we have the price increasing right here as we're breaking the resistance of the flag plus increasing volume, that's a bullish volume signal. So that looks really good here with Dogecoin to see a bull flag breakout coupled with a volume increase. And also it was cool to see the fact that this inverse head and shoulders right here played out perfectly. The inverse head and shoulders works the same way. As you break bullish out of the resistance line, that neckline right there, you get a big pump in the market. So just like how you're looking for a breakout with the bull flag of the resistance line, this line right here, you're also looking for a break above the neckline with the inverse head and shoulders. So that would be basically where the left shoulder starts forming and where the right shoulder starts forming. You'll find this neckline right here. It's pretty easy to see usually. And when you break above that level, it confirms a pattern. So you can see how there's multiple patterns playing out here on Dogecoin in the 15-minute time frame. The other cool thing about this too is the bull flag also works as a bear flag. So it can be a bearish pattern as well. So if you look right here, we have a typical bear flag right here, right? Prices are in a downtrend. Then we start moving up in a channel. We break bearish out of that channel, and you can see that that led to more downward continuation until it finally found support and saw a bullish reversal. So these patterns work very well. Like, it's crazy how well they work, especially, you know, we're on the 15-minute time frame here, but technically the bigger the time frame, the more effective the trading pattern. So let's say that you see a bull flag on the 1 month time frame, right? You're in a big 1 month time frame like this and you see a big bullish flag pattern. That pattern has more volume, it's more meaningful than the smaller patterns. Not that you can't use trading patterns on the 15-minute, but it's just that the bigger the trading pattern, the more meaningful it is. The higher probability that it's actually going to play out in the way that you want it to, right? Evening, HAI. Well, evening. Thank you for tuning in, Acid Hunter. Hunter? One? Thought it said Hunter for a second. When do you think we will have an alt season? You know, I'm glad that you brought that up because this goes along perfectly with what we're talking about today with trading patterns. So if you're looking at Bitcoin dominance, it becomes very apparent that Bitcoin dominance is in a big rising wedge pattern right here. So this is a bearish pattern to see a rising wedge on Bitcoin dominance. And let's pull up our our chart patterns here again. And let's find the rising wedge pattern. Here we go. Again, you guys can get all of these chart patterns for free. Just join the Discord, go down to knowledge and links, and click top trading patterns. And I made all of these diagrams myself, and you can get all of them completely free. So this is a rising wedge pattern. This is a bearish pattern. This is actually, it's what happened right here on Bitcoin. Dominance right here. You can see a rising wedge pattern happened right here on Bitcoin dominance. And it's actually pretty common when you break bearish out of a rising wedge to have the price come back up and then reject and then go lower. So you can see once we broke bearish out of this rising wedge pattern, in other words, once we failed this lower trend line right here, that was the confirmation of the pattern. Then price dropped because people were all watching that line, so you got a lot of sell orders. But then it bounced back up and then rejected off resistance again before falling down. And that's actually what we see here with the rising wedge in this case as well. Let's drop down to the 1 week time frame, and you'll see that once we broke bearish out of the pattern right here, the price came back up with a wick, happened really fast, and actually tested that resistance again before starting to go back down. So to see a big rising wedge here on Bitcoin dominance is very bearish for Bitcoin dominance. It's not bearish for Bitcoin. It's actually super bullish for Bitcoin because Bitcoin always pumps during alt season. It's just that people are so excited about crypto that altcoins are doing a bigger percentage gain, and so therefore you get a bigger pump in the altcoin market, and so Bitcoin dominance goes down. But technically speaking, Bitcoin dominance being bearish is actually bullish for Bitcoin because, for example, Bitcoin went from 3K to 69K right here when Bitcoin dominance fell off a cliff, and it went from 1K to 20K when Bitcoin dominance fell off a cliff right here. So you can see when Bitcoin dominance is dropping, it's actually bullish for Bitcoin because it's bullish for crypto is what it is. And Bitcoin still goes up in value. So it's just that altcoins make you way more money. So alt season is set up to happen very soon. It's like we're like right here, right before the big alt season pump. And what's crazy is I see a lot of people that just quit uploading. Like Crypto Sniper, like a lot of people that I know, they basically just stopped uploading because everybody was expecting a big alt season and it never happened. So a lot of people are basically just rage quitting or just giving up, you know, which is interesting to me, like big accounts, big YouTubers not uploading. And I'm like, you guys, look, if you're bearish, then upload bearish content, all right? Like, go with your conviction. Don't just stop posting. But if you're bullish, then, you know, share your thesis with the world. I'm bullish. Like, I believe the market's still primed for an alt season. This just looks like a big trick, a big, basically, illusion that the whales have created to make everybody feel like there's not going to be an alt season anymore. But looking at Bitcoin dominance clearly tells us that we will have a big alt season in this market. So it's like, come on, you guys, don't stop uploading. If you really have a view about what the market's going to do, share it. Don't just give up because it didn't follow your original convictions, you know. Keep doing analysis. That's what good traders and investors do. They always keep doing analysis. Even if they make a mistake, you keep analyzing the market. You keep looking at what's going on so you can make a better choice next time and learn from it, you know. But yeah, Bitcoin dominance, very bearish looking. Big rising wedge pattern, just like what led to the 2021 bull market on altcoins and Bitcoin too, of course. But you can see how that does not look bullish in any way. And even if you're looking at this from cycle perspective, like if you're more of a cyclical trader, if you take the time cycles tool and drop from this low to this low right here, in other words, going from peak bottom to peak bottom, which is the way that you measure time cycles, you could see here that Bitcoin dominance is actually set up to go like this. It's actually set up to pull back just like it did right here. And just like it did right here, we're at that point of the cycle where Bitcoin dominance is set up to fall off a cliff here, to pull back in a significant way, which is super bullish for the crypto market. So I'm loving these rising wedges here, and I'm loving the fact that we're seeing perfect trading patterns appearing in this market, which is what today's live stream is all about, is trading patterns, right? Okay, let's go over some more of you guys' requests here in the chat. Can you check TFuel pattern? Thank you. Sure. Let's pull up good old TFuel here. Let's drop time frame. Let's go down to like the 15-minute like we were on Dogecoin. It also helps if there's liquidity, like the more volume something has, you're going to get more clear trading patterns. Like here with TFuel, you can see we have these big wicks right here. These big giant wicks. Big, huge wicks, right? That doesn't happen. Like, for example, if this was on Coinbase and there's more trading volume than there is right now, you wouldn't get that volatility like that. It would be more liquid than it is just with, because TFuel is really only on Binance. Same with Theta. I do believe that will change, but whenever you're looking for trading patterns in markets, especially in the smaller time frames, it's easier to trade the market when there's more liquidity because you don't get these crazy stuff like that, you know, just volatility all the time. You get a lot more clear patterns, which clarity is super important when you're trying to trade and invest in these markets. So this is actually, I'm glad you brought this one up because this is a classical double bottom pattern. So we have our first low right here, first bottom form right here. Price comes back down to that bottom, but the bulls defend that level. In other words, it doesn't drop below like that. And it made a classic double bottom formation here on TFuel. Now what we want to see is a break above this neckline because the pattern isn't confirmed until we break above this neckline. And it almost has cup and handle pattern vibes too. It kind of looks like a cup and handle. But I would label this as a double bottom because technically the cup and handle is more of a continuation pattern than anything else. In other words, you're already in an uptrend and then a cup and handle pattern forms like that. It can be a reversal pattern, but it's more typically a continuation pattern. So this to me looks like a classic double bottom formation on TFuel. So a break above this level right here, super bullish. Super, super bullish. That level happens to be 0.153, 0.0153 here on TFuel. So a break above just over a penny here would be very bullish here for TFuel and lead to continuation. Now what's really cool about trading patterns is you can measure what's called the amplitude of the pattern. So the amplitude of the pattern is measuring from peak low to peak top. So from the bottom to the high of the pattern. And then you basically put that on top. So you can see I took my trend line tool over here and I held shift, because if you hold shift, it will lock your trend line into 45-degree angles or vertical or horizontal angles. And basically what I did was I measured from the bottom of the pattern to the top where the neckline is at. Now you can put that at the point of breakout. So let's say the price of TFuel breaks bullish out of this neckline in the next day or so. Once we break above that neckline here, the minimum target for this pattern is 0.017. So that's where you get a target for the pattern. This works for inverse head and shoulders. This works for double bottom. This works for cup and handle. This works for a bunch of trading patterns. It's called the amplitude of the pattern. Now that is a minimum target. So what I mean by that is the target can easily be exceeded. So like you will often see the price break higher than that level, but you know for sure that it's at least going to hit that level, or there's a high probability that it will at least hit that level. So that's what I see here with TFuel, is a double bottom formation. Link, XRP, XLM, XDC, QNT, HBAR. Whew, you got a big, big bag there on all of that stuff. A lot of different coins. Nice, though. Those are good holds. Link is good. XRP is good. XLM is good. XDC is good. QNT. Like, those are all solid holds to be invested into. In fact, I want to bring up QNT because we're talking about chart patterns today. And Quant is a really, really good example of chart patterns, like classical technical analysis for chart patterns. Basically, when you look at QNT here on the log scale, let's go to the 3-day. What do you see? You see a big triangle formation. So this is a big triangle pattern here on QNT, which is really awesome, by the way. This is exactly what Bitcoin did before Bitcoin went to the moon. If we pull up BTC here on the dollar and we look at Bitcoin right here, Bitcoin did a very similar triangle pattern on the logarithmic scale. See that big triangle here on Bitcoin? That led to a big increase in value, right? A huge bullish breakout all the way up to 126,000. Not without a retest of the previous high right here, but that triangle led to a massive continuation for Bitcoin. Now, if you're looking at Quant, it's also in a big triangle pattern right now as we speak. And by the way, that's really good here for the big picture because wave 4 is most commonly a triangle. So if you look right here, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4. So we're getting ready for a big 5th wave on the log chart here for Quant. And that is a big triangle pattern, which wave 4 is commonly a triangle. And that's exactly what we see here with Quant. A, B, C, D, E. Perfect triangle pattern here with this coin. It's awesome. It looks amazing. It's a perfect triangle pattern. So big picture continuation, just like what happened to Bitcoin, very probable for Quant. And by the way, that was also wave 4 here with Bitcoin. If you're looking at Bitcoin, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4. So Bitcoin did a triangle in wave 4 as well, and now we're moving into a big extended 5th wave for Bitcoin, which should take us to levels people just can't even barely imagine right now. But a bunch of people are bearish for some reason, but whatever. So yeah, Quant is a really good hold. Okay, let's see what other requests we have here. Velo. Yeah, let's do Velo as well. Velo is a perfect example of classical technical analysis. So if you pull up the Velo chart here, and then we go to the logarithmic scale, this is a rising wedge right here. So we have a rising wedge pattern, which we were learning about earlier in the live stream. If you look at this, this is a rising wedge pattern for Velo, like this, big rising wedge. But actually, what's good about this is this can be a leading diagonal. So let's pull up our leading diagonal example here. Where are we here? Here we go. So this is a leading diagonal Elliott wave. So let's delete the rising wedge here, zoom out a little bit, and make this bigger so you guys can see clearly. And if you look here, there's 5 waves up here inside of that rising wedge pattern. So let's grab our Elliott wave tool right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there's our 5 waves up here for our leading diagonal formation, because the rising wedge is actually typical of a bullish reversal if it's connected to a bigger Elliott wave pattern. In other words, the rising wedge itself is bearish. You see the breakdown right here of the rising wedge. But the pattern in the big picture can turn into a leading diagonal, which ends up being bullish, part of a bigger bullish structure. And that's exactly what we see here. 5 waves up, A, B, and C. Perfect ABC correction down to support. And now what's happening here with Velo We should see a bottom formation very soon. And that's actually what this is, by the way. This whole pattern right here is a big bottom formation for Velo. But if you look, this is wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we basically just did wave 1 and 2 of a bigger reversal coming for this coin. And by the way, it's typical for wave 2 to be deep. When you're learning about Elliot Wave principle, wave 2 is typically pretty deep. It's one of the deepest corrections in a classic Elliot Wave impulse. So if you're looking at Elliot Waves, if you're counting them, don't be surprised to see wave 2 come all the way back down. And the reason for that is because there's still a lot of selling pressure from the bear market. So wave 2 comes really deep, and a lot of people think it's going to go lower, that it will fail, and the bear market will continue, but it actually makes a higher low, and that leads to a big 3 wave, which ends up being super bullish. Wave 3 is typically very bullish. The only wave that's more bullish than wave 3 is wave 5 sometimes, can be more bullish, but wave 3 is very bullish. It cannot be the smallest wave, so it's going to be bigger than wave 1. So you can see here, that's exactly what we see here with Velo. Big, deep wave 2, very, very deep wave 2. But then wave 3 is coming in this market, and it will be very bullish. It will be very impulsive, even bigger than what we saw from this low right here up to this peak right here in wave 1. It'll be more bullish than wave 1 was, and more vertical and more parabolic. So this is a perfect example of chart patterns in the market. A little bit more advanced Elliott wave principle, but still pretty basic. It's not like a complex correction or anything like that, like a WXYXZ correction. It's still pretty basic technical analysis. So this was a perfect example for the purpose of today's live stream, which is to learn chart patterns that you guys need to know for the up and coming bull market with crypto. Hello, what do you think about XCN project from company chain? Also, how do you think it will perform on a bull time? Love the show. All the best. Well, thank you for tuning in, Michael. And yeah, we can pull up XCN. I actually don't know a lot about the company itself, but I'm happy to cover analysis of the coin itself. So this is a bull flag. So first of all, let's pull up our chart patterns here. Double bottom formation. So first of all, you can see a double bottom formation here. So here's a big double bottom, first low right here, second low right here, big double bottom formation on Onyx coin, right? And you can see that once we broke above the neckline of that double bottom, that led to a big vertical move. And let's test the amplitude of the pattern that we learned about earlier, where you measure from the bottom of the pattern to the top of the neckline, and then put it on top, and that's your minimum target. And you can see we actually went above our minimum target, which is pretty common. We exceeded the minimum target for the double bottom pattern. But now basically we have a bull flag pattern here. So let's pull up my chart patterns here. Copy this, go back over. So now you can see we have a bullish flag pattern. So here's a bull flag, and that's exactly what we're doing here with Onyx. This is a big bullish flag. And a lot of times you can switch between the log scale or the linear scale when you're looking for trading patterns. If you see it on the log scale, it's probably more meaningful, higher chance of it playing out. And we're on the logarithmic scale right now with Onyx instead of the regular linear scale. So that's really cool because we have this big bull flag right here, which also kind of has a big cup and handle shape to it as well. You can see here's our cup and here's our handle. And this is what Bitcoin did before Bitcoin pumped really hard. Let's go to the daily here on Bitcoin and drop off the log scale and zoom in. Bitcoin did a similar structure. Here's a bull flag. Well, let's switch back to the 3-day. Here's a bull flag on Bitcoin and a cup and handle pattern. So here's our bull flag right here. and here's our cup. So big cup and handle, right? Let's go back over to similar pattern, really, you know, very similar is what we see here with Onyx. Big cup and handle pattern with a bull flag is the handle of the pattern. Which if you look into the cup and handle pattern, like let's just go to Google Images. And by the way, if you want to learn about these trading patterns, Google Images is a great resource. I learned a lot of these trading patterns from either books, videos, or Google Images. Like it's so helpful to come over here to Google Images. But if you look at a bunch of examples of the cup and handle pattern, you'll see that most commonly the handle is kind of a bull flag structure. That handle is very, very bull flag-esque, you know. It's got bull flag type energy to it essentially most of the time. Sometimes it can be more of a cup shape like this, but a lot of times it's a bull flag pattern, which is cool. It's cool to see how patterns are conjoining together into a bigger formation. And whenever you get confluence of multiple bullish patterns, that's a really good sign for the markets. So yeah, I'm bullish here on Onyx for sure, especially if we break above this resistance line right here of the bull flag. Because if we get above that resistance line, that confirms the bull flag pattern, and we're going to see a big bullish move here for Onyx. But this is a bad time to sell. It's a really, really good time to buy at the bottom of that bull flag pattern. And also, I really, really love this ABC correction here. That's awesome to see that inside of the structure of the cup and handle pattern as well. So really love that setup there with Onyx. Tam says, great to see you streaming, Dallin. Can you check the hex chart, please? Sure. Be happy to. Let's pull up a deck screener here. You guys, basically, these trading patterns will change your life. Like, understanding the basics of trading patterns and using them, especially in the big picture in conjunction with bigger time frames, you know, when you're looking at those bigger time frames, these trading patterns will change your life. They will make you so much better of a trader, because most people trade because of news or because their friend told them about something that they said is going to go up, or because everybody's excited about a certain industry, so they all just pile in. Very few people have a correct understanding of even the basic principles of technical analysis. And if they do, a lot of people have too big of a bias where they have too big of an idea of what the market's already going to do. So they ignore all of the patterns that they're seeing just to look at the one that they want to see instead. My throat's a little... I was up late last night and doing music with my friends, and for some reason my throat's like a little dry today. So looking at Hex here, we have a falling wedge pattern here on Hex. So you can see, if we zoom out a little bit, stretch the chart up so we get a good perspective of the pattern. This is a falling wedge right here on Hex, and we have bullish divergence as well. So this is a bullish pattern. We have a higher low in price, so there's bullish divergence right here, and we have a falling wedge, so we have conjunction of bullish patterns, falling wedge and bullish divergence at the same time, which is really good. And also, even just looking at market cycles, this right here is a mini market cycle on Hex. So here is the disbelief phase, then you go up to euphoria, then you have the anger phase, and now we're in the depression phase of this little cycle here. So that's a pretty typical kind of cycle. In fact, just even looking at, let's go to the NASDAQ and pull up the NASDAQ Composite Index here. If you look at the NASDAQ on, let's go to like the the 4-day time frame here, you'll quickly see that this is actually what the NASDAQ did too during the internet bubble. So stretching the chart out a little bit here. So here's the disbelief phase right here, euphoria, anger, depression. Going back over to Hex. So once you learn how to identify those points in the cycle, you start to see the cycle, even if it takes a little bit of a different shape or fashion or a little bit of a different structure, it's the same essential pattern appearing in the market. So that is a market cycle. That's a market cycle here on Hex. And you can even tell too, here's the bull trap. This is the bull trap on the NASDAQ, right? Same point right there. The anger phase is always a false bottom followed by the true bottom. So you just learn how to see it better and better. So yeah, I'm very bullish on Hex, still bullish on Hex, on PulseChain, on all of those coins that I've been looking at in some of these streams. Hey Dallin, hope you are doing great. Do we have any more downside for ADA, Zen, or Stark? Can you please analyze all or anyone if you have time? Thank you. Sure. Let's start with ADA here, and then we'll go over the other coins as well. So let's pull up ADA. Let's actually drop time frames, just like we did with Dogecoin as well, because I have a feeling we're going to see some of the same patterns, and that's exactly right. So just zooming in here on the 15-minute time frame, you can see that we have a bull flag here on Cardano. So here's a bull flag right here, and here is an inverse head shoulder. So here's our left shoulder, our right shoulder, and our head. So there's some bullish patterns. This is very super bullish to see a big spike in volume right here at the point of breakout. So you can see we broke bullish out of the resistance of this flag right here. And now we're starting to really get some momentum here. And it's really good to see a big spike in volume at the point of breakout. So in the very near future, we should see a lot of continuation here on the 15-minute time frame with Cardano, all the way up through this whole low down here. The markets are so oversold, it's ridiculous. So it's no surprise that on the smaller time frames, we're seeing a lot of bullish patterns, because in the bigger time frames, we are super oversold. Whether you're looking at the MACD, the RSI, the Fear and Greed Index, whatever you're looking at, we are extremely oversold in these markets in the bigger picture. So to see a bunch of bullish patterns forming on the smaller time frame is totally expected. So here is an ABC correction as well. So that's a bullish pattern. I mean, technically it goes down during the pattern, but it leads to a bullish reversal, right? So what we should see here in the bigger picture as well is this type of a move with Cardano. And also we're on major support. So this right here is our major support level. We're right on that level. Perfect time to buy, right? You don't want to sell all-time support. That's really dumb to do. But it's super smart to buy those support levels. And actually, it looks like it's basically an exact support and resistance flip here with Cardano. It's kind of a similar thing that happened right here, right? Where price came back down to this major support level, went a little bit below, but it was just a shakeout. It was just a trick to scare people out of the market, a liquidity grab, so the big pump could actually happen. The big vertical move could actually happen, and that's exactly what we see here with Cardano as well. This kind of shakeout pattern in the market happening all over again. Just like that. Same thing. So it looks really bullish in the short term and in the big picture, and it's a very excellent opportunity in terms of being super oversold, bullish patterns, and a lot of reasons to be expecting a big reversal here for Cardano. Now let's talk about, I believe you wanted me to cover Stark as well. So let's pull up STRK. This has the same co-founder as Zcash. So if you guys are big on Zcash, I'm a big believer in Zcash. Most privacy coins I really like. Then this is definitely something to have on your radar. This is a good coin. So we have a big bullish flag here on the 15-minute time frame. And you can see that that's a really good sign. We haven't broke above the resistance of the flag, but as we start to break above that level, we should see a huge increase in value in the short term based on this bullish flag pattern. And you can see a big spike in volume here as well, which is a really, really good sign to see here with STRK. So we should see continuation of this reversal here that we're seeing on the 15-minute time frame. And in the big picture, this is the same kind of story of what I've been talking about with undervalued assets that are oversold in the big picture. So let's take it off the log chart and look at the linear. This looks amazing. This looks very typical of what we see when something goes through a bear market and it's ready for a big reversal in the market. So let's go ahead and pull up ADA here. ADA big picture analysis. And you can see right here, here's ADA on the right, and here is STRK over here on the left. And by the way, ADA also saw one more shakeout like this, just like what we saw here with STRK. It's the same pattern in the market appearing over and over and over again. So just having a correct understanding of the structure, super key, super important to have. Can I cover PulseChain? Sure, I'll cover PulseChain as well. Might as well. WPLS. So PulseChain has bullish divergence. So that's a pretty fundamental pattern that you need to know. Basically, price goes like this, makes a lower low, but the indicator makes a higher low. Either the RSI or the MACD or whatever indicator you're looking for divergence on. And in the case of PulseChain, the very first thing that I see when I pull up this chart here is bullish divergence. So even though price made a lower low here, and a bunch of people are probably freaking out and selling their PulseChain and expecting a big crash, and they're all worried about the 4-year cycle top and all of this stuff, what we're doing is we actually made a higher low on the MACD, which is a bullish divergence. This is one of the most powerful buy signals that you can find in the market. Not to mention the fact that there's a bullish divergence going all the way back. So like it's not just one point of divergence. This goes all the way back to July of 2024. So this has been forming over a long period of time, and it's a very, very strong buy signal for PulseChain. The other thing that we can see here as well is that PulseChain is in a classic falling wedge. If you look at it in the big picture, this is a classic falling wedge structure, which is one of the bullish patterns that you'll get if you go ahead and download all of those free patterns that are in my Discord. You'll see all of these patterns that I've made for you guys to use. Falling wedge is one of those bullish patterns. And you can just go to my Discord, click knowledge and links, and click on top trading patterns, and you can download all of those completely free. I don't even make you sign up for an email list or anything like that. It's just a bunch of bullish patterns completely free, no strings attached. So you can see here that PulseChain is in a big falling wedge. And these wedges can be different angles. You know, they can be really steep like this, or they can be really mellow like this. And just, you know, ready to pump. Just as big of a pump happens, but it's just a little bit of a different angle of the same pattern. So that's important to know about these trading patterns, is you will get different varieties of their structure, whether it's steep or not so steep, and you have to kind of be aware of that in order to spot the pattern, because a lot of people will just be looking for steep ones, and still they're not really aware of these more mellow falling wedges. But I mean, Bitcoin did a more mellow falling wedge right here in 2018. See this? This is more of a mellow falling wedge. And it led to a big breakout. There was a double bottom afterwards, breakout, double bottom, but ultimately it led to a big breakout in price to see that falling wedge play out on Bitcoin. Not to mention the fact that we also see a more steep example of a falling wedge right here. So here's a falling wedge on Bitcoin that's more steep, and you can see that led to a bullish breakout. Not a reversal like we saw with this more mellow falling wedge right here, but it did lead to a bullish breakout in the short term that brought price up to basically 12,000 per coin before going for bearish continuation. So it's cool to see those patterns appearing in the market across all these different time frames. It can also be a rising wedge pattern like we talked about with Bitcoin dominance earlier. Here's a rising wedge right here. And you can see we had a bearish break of this pattern, because that's what the rising wedge is, just the bearish version of a falling wedge, and that led to a big drop right here on Bitcoin. And even here too, we have a falling wedge right here that led to a short-term bullish breakout. So you can see how these patterns are just signaling over and over again whether the market's going to go up or down or up or down, just very effectively. Even right here, check this out. Falling wedge right here on Bitcoin, which led to a big, big vertical break all the way up to 14,000 per coin. Big vertical break there on Bitcoin. So these patterns are really, really, really helpful to understand and to be aware of. Same with this bottom right here on Bitcoin. Falling wedge. Classic falling wedge pattern. And then a bullish breakout after, we broke bullish out of the resistance of that pattern and led to a big vertical move here with Bitcoin. Even right here, one more time, you can see we have a falling wedge right here on Bitcoin, which led to a vertical breakout. So this is why I tell people, I don't know how you guys can be bearish on altcoins when we're down 90+% from our peak up here. Here's our peak on Stark, for example, but there's tons of examples. We're down 90% plus. That's where you should be buying. Plus, look at this. Bitcoin dominance is in a classic rising wedge pattern. Super bearish pattern to see. So that's bullish for altcoins. That's bullish for all of your favorite coins to see a big rising wedge like that. So if you look right here, that's what led to the last altcoin bull market, was a big rising wedge. So it's super, super key to understand these trading patterns and to be analyzing and watching them in the market, to be aware of all of them. What happened with Rapdog? I told everybody to sell. It just got removed off major exchanges. The liquidity dried up. The community stopped doing stuff. Like it just wasn't a good hold. So I told everybody to sell before it dumped, and then it fell off a cliff basically because a lot of people I know held it. So we kind of dumped the market together. It's kind of crazy. Love you, Dallin. Been following you since early 2017. Well, hey, thank you, Hockey. I appreciate that, and hope you've been finding value in the channel and enjoying the big picture analysis, which is my primary focus, as you guys know, is to help you guys make good decisions in the big picture. But of course, I talk about the smaller time frames as well to give you guys an idea of what could happen on those time frames. Your calm voice is so soothing in these turbulent times, Dallin. Please take a minute and look at XPR and loan. Sure. And thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Let's pull up XPR here. So this is an expanded flat correction here with XPR. At first it looked like it could have been a running flat, but this is an expanded flat correction. So basically the way this works, there's the running flat pattern that looks like this. Then there's the expanded flat that looks more like this, where the C wave actually breaks below the support level of the A wave. This is the same thing that XRP is doing. It's also the same thing that the NASDAQ did in in 2008 and 2003. I mean the S&P 500, not the NASDAQ. So if you look at this here, that's what XPR is doing here, is an expanded flat correction. So we break out bullish. It looks like it's going to just straight moon, but then it dumps. Then it falls below the support level of the A wave, which everybody freaks out and panic sells when it's really the best possible time to be buying. So we'll pull up a couple examples of this pattern here. That's actually what Bitcoin is doing right now, by the way. Bitcoin did an expanded flat correction. Wave A, wave B, and wave C. Expanded flat. Same thing that it did right here too. Expanded flat correction. So it's repeating the same pattern that it did last time. And if you look right here on XPR, you can see that this also did an expanded flat. But the example I wanted to use was to show you guys the S&P 500 during the 2003 and the 2008 housing market crash. So here's the S&P 500, and here's a classic expanded flat correction. Wave A, wave B, and wave C. Going back over to XPR, you can see that that's the same thing XPR is doing. So it's a pretty bullish pattern to see that. The reason so many people get tricked by it is because they all think wave A is going to hold and it drops a little bit below, and they all think that wave B is the beginning of a big pump and it just totally rejects because it looks like it's going to break out, because it is breaking out a little bit, but then it totally rejects, and it looks like it's going to fail support because it is failing a little bit, but it doesn't just keep going down, and it doesn't just keep going up at either point, so it totally tricks people. That's why it looks like this, right? You can see how that would trick people. You know, they think they see it break above this level right here, and they're like, yes, we're all going to get rich. And then it dumps super hard. They think support will probably hold, and it falls slightly below, so they all sell. They all buy right here, and they all sell right here. So that expanded flat is definitely a pattern that you guys need to be aware of for the crypto markets in the future. You will see this pattern over and over again, and it tricks people. This is how I was able to call the top on Flocky when everybody else was all super bullish on Flocky back here. People were just so bullish right here, it was ridiculous. They thought Flocky was just going to just straight go to the moon right here. And it didn't. It pulled all the way back. It came back way, way lower support, all the way down after that. But I was aware that this looked more like an expanded flat structure than anything else. So I was thinking, you know what? This looks like a false breakout when we started to break above this zero wave right here. And it ended up being a big false breakout, and this whole crash right here happened. And in fact, it actually turned into an even bigger crash later. So it was actually the top of the cycle right there for Flocky. So it's super key to understand these patterns because it helps you disseminate when it's a time to be buying, when it's a time to be selling. Are people being too greedy? Is everybody euphoric? Then it might be an expanded flat instead of a real breakout. Are people too bearish? Then it's probably the bottom of the C wave in an expanded flat like what we see right now with XPR or even Bitcoin. The amount of bearishness on Bitcoin right now is ridiculous. People are so bearish, it's ridiculous. Let's delete some of these so that we can see better. So, you know, people are so bearish, but really we're doing an expanded flat. So this tells me that no, we're probably not in a big bear market like everybody's calling for. We had a big correction for sure, but everybody's bearish at the bottom of a C wave of an expanded flat, just like they were right here. They're doing the same thing again right here. And this even looks like more of a textbook example than right here. This is an even better example of an expanded flat here on Bitcoin than what we saw back there. But they're both expanded flat corrections. Oh, I guess you wanted me to cover loan as well, so I'll do that. Pull up loan. Crypto. Yeah, I don't know where loan is. I don't know where to do analysis on that. Hex on Ethereum. Sure. Let's pull up Dex Screener here and pull up old eHex. No, it's just Hex. I just have to pull up the... Okay. Zoom out a little bit here. If it'll load. We'll let that load for a second, then we'll cover it in just a second. This is some good stuff. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm trying to focus on education in these live streams because my purpose is to help people know what to do for themselves. I mean, I'll tell you guys what I think is going to do based on my experience of doing this over the past 9 years. But my primary goal is to teach you guys how to fish. So education, information is my primary goal, to help you guys become profitable investors for yourselves, so you can think for yourselves with these markets and not just trust some random person on the internet, like some dude on X or something that's telling you to buy the top like always happens. Speaking of cup and handle, has the silver decade-long cup and handle completed? So that's actually an excellent question. A lot of people are wondering, is the top in for silver? You know, it pumped really hard. Is this the end of the bull market for silver? We did crash a little bit more. You know, if we zoom in, we did fall a little bit lower than this support right here that we had at 71, and we started to pull back down to $64 per ounce. And with silver, you can actually say per coin if you want to, because they make 1 ounce silver coins, right? Because I'll do like stock analysis sometimes, and I'll actually say per coin instead of per share because I do so much crypto analysis. But with silver, you can actually say that and still be right, which is kind of funny. Do I think the cup and handle pattern is topped out? Well, first of all, you can measure the pattern. So we can go from we just go like this. We form the cup and handle pattern like this, draw it on the chart. And then you can take from the very bottom of the pattern to the very top, and this is your minimum target for the pattern. Now, most of the time, you'll exceed your minimum target. So you can see we did hit the minimum target, which was $82 per ounce of silver. We went all the way up to 121, which, by the way, shout out to my VIP members. You guys know I was posting to buy silver right here at $12 per ounce because of a classic market cycle and ABC correction for silver. And we did break out bullish in a very, very significant way here with with silver. Now, do I think it's the top? No, I don't think this is the top of silver. I think that we will see more continuation. This is a huge accumulation. If you look how big that cup and handle, this goes all the way back to 1970. So this is realistically part of a bigger trend that's forming for silver. In my view, this is an excellent opportunity to buy the dip. Now, a lot of people were asking me if they should sell their crypto to buy silver up here, and I told them no. That's stupid. Silver is overvalued. It'll probably see a 30% plus correction. That's exactly what happened. It dropped down over 30% from our peak right here. So it's really a good time to buy the dip because the big picture trend should continue. We should see more upside. We just broke out of such a big accumulation that this is actually following a lot more of a type of a pattern as what happened to the NASDAQ. So let's go to the 5-day time frame here, and we'll compare the NASDAQ and silver together, which is actually part of what cued me into the bottom on silver at $12 per ounce. But let's pull up the NASDAQ here. So here's the NASDAQ composite index, okay? And if you look right here, it's actually the same pattern, right? Silver basically did the exact same pattern. Here's the internet bubble, the double bottom. Here's the silver bubble that happened in 2008 and 2010. You know, really 2010 is when it was in the bubble phase. Then it popped, it pulled back. The reason at $12 per ounce I was so bullish on silver is because I was comparing it to the NASDAQ. Market cycles, right? Human psychology. And if you look, the NASDAQ has gone up a lot from that point. And just looking at silver, realistically, silver is just doing a healthy correction, something like this, along the way up. It's very probable that we see continuation for silver, that the price of silver continues to rally and see more vertical price action. So this is actually a really excellent opportunity to be buying the dip here on silver before continuation of the trend. It's a really good opportunity. I mean, we're down 36%, and from the peak down, we're down 46%. So that's a perfect buy the dip on silver. BCH, AVAX, LTC. All right, let's do those as well. I didn't even realize that I'm over an hour into the live stream, so I probably won't be able to do all of the requests that you guys have requested for the day. I've got some other things I'm doing. So let's pull up Bitcoin Cash here. Let's drop time frames, because the main purpose of today's live stream is to talk about trading patterns, which, yep, this one's got a bull flag as well. So this is also a rounded bottom. So here's a pattern that we really haven't seen on the other charts that we were looking at. This is a rounded bottom pattern, very bullish. This pattern has like a 90% success rate. So that's a very, very bullish pattern here for Bitcoin Cash on the 15-minute. Also, what you can see here, which is really cool, we're breaking bullish out of a bull flag as well. Just like what we saw with Dogecoin, just like what we saw with ADA, we're breaking bullish out of a bull flag pattern here on Bitcoin Cash as well. So I do expect significant continuation in the short term. In the big picture, you guys already know my view on Bitcoin Cash, which is very bullish for this coin. Going out to the logarithmic scale, zooming all the way out, you can see that Bitcoin Cash broke bullish out of downward trending resistance. We have a big double bottom pattern here as well. Super bullish. So this thing looks amazing in the big picture. Not to mention the fact that, by the way, if we pull up Bitcoin Cash on the linear chart and pull up Litecoin over here on the right, it looks exactly like a bigger version of Litecoin before 2017 happened. So let's pull up Litecoin USD. And we'll go over here. And you can see that that's the exact same pattern. So this big accumulation on Litecoin, well, guess what? Bitcoin Cash has an even bigger accumulation that will lead to an even bigger vertical breakout in a very, very profound way. So that's super, super bullish for Bitcoin Cash. AVAX, LTC. You know, we'll go with, let's do Litecoin. Let's do some Litecoin analysis. Litecoin is so simple. First of all, look at Litecoin versus Bitcoin. This thing is so bullish, it's ridiculous. If we pull up Litecoin versus Bitcoin, look how bullish this is. We're in a big falling wedge. We're extremely undervalued. This is a massive, just a massive wedge. Like, this is so undervalued versus Bitcoin. It's ridiculous. So if you look right here, let's pull up Litecoin versus the dollar on Coinbase. Litecoin versus the dollar. And let's take off our drawing tools here. But also, looking at the NVIDIA fractal, it's still a perfect example of what we're looking for a big picture accumulation and for a big vertical breakout. So let's go to the 5-day time frame here. Look at this. It looks exactly like NVIDIA. Like, buying Litecoin right now is just exactly like buying NVIDIA, like right here. It's like the same thing. Such a good opportunity, super undervalued, perfect opportunity to buy Litecoin before Litecoin pumps all the way to a new all-time high. And if you look right here, even the volume is the same. Look at that. The volume on Litecoin, the volume on NVIDIA, like the same exact type of pattern appearing in the market. Even right down to the volume structure, you know. Basically 2 big scoops in volume. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be super bullish on Litecoin. And I do see a big, profound bullish move coming for Litecoin. All right, cool. I'm going to call it a day. I've got some things to do with my friend, and I don't really want to just sit here and stream all day. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope you guys found this stream valuable. Go ahead and go into my Discord and click on the knowledge and links and click on top trading patterns. And in here, you're going to get a list of all of the top trading patterns for crypto. Completely free. You can download this. You're, completely free, no strings attached. All you got to do is join the Discord. Now, I will warn you, there's a lot of people in my Discord. Unfortunately, it's like almost impossible for me to stop this. But there's people that will pretend to be me. They'll create accounts. They'll get all these usernames. Then they'll leave my Discord. So they're not even in my server. I can't even ban them anymore. And they'll pretend that they're me. And they'll ask you for money. So I'm never going to direct message you and ask you for money in my Discord. And I'm definitely not going to tell you to go sign up for some trading website that's going to promise you a bunch of gains. There's been a couple people, like maybe 2 people, that fell for it, that sent pretty significant amounts of money to people that were probably in some third world country that are trying to scam Americans, or people that have a lot of money, whether they're American or not. So be aware of that. Definitely, if you see somebody message you and start to pretend that they're me, it's not me. I'm not going to message you. I get enough messages as it is. I don't really have time to just sit and message people anyways. So be aware of that. But definitely join the free Discord. Go to knowledge and links and get the top trading patterns in there, and you will be glad that you did. They're really powerful. All these different trading patterns will change your life once you start to learn how to see them and apply them in the market. So that's my stream for the day. I love you guys. I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you guys in future videos and in future live streams. And as always, stay profitable out there.